Hi guys, welcome back to Snakes and Adders Introducing Series. Today we're going to go through species notes on this awesome little snake called the Kenyan sandboa. Its Latin name is Gongylophis colubrinus. It was first described by Carl Linnaeus in 1758, and its Latin name it was given was Anguis colubrina. It then went through quite a few taxonomic changes, and the Latin names it's been classified under have been Eryx colubrinus in 1803, Eryx thibacus or thibacus in 1834, Eryx scutata in 1842, Eryx jaculus variety scenariensis, Eryx thibacus again, Eryx thibacus loveregii, Eryx colubrinus, Eryx rufescens. The last four happening in just 5 years. It was reclassified 4 times. What the hell? Then it was split by Stull in 1935 to Eryx colubrinus colubrinus and Eryx colubrinus loveregii, the Kenyan sandboa being Eryx colubrinus loveregii, what you see here. And this is actually an excellent example which we'll get to slightly later. Eryx colubrinus colubrinus represented the northern part of the range. Eryx colubrinus loveregii represented the southern part of the range. The loveregii name, well, what happened then was Tokar in 1989 reclassified it to Gongylophis colubrinus, which is where it resides now. But when I first entered the hobby, I knew this as Eryx colubrinus loveregii. It wasn't, it was Gongylophis colubrinus, but the hobby tends to move at its own pace whilst science presses on ahead, and the hobby still had to catch on. A lot of the text that I was reading had been printed as Eryx colubrinus loveregii. All the notes that I could read online were of that, so therefore I accepted it as that, and it took quite a while for me to clock on to the fact that they'd actually in fact moved to genus Gongylophis, along with the rough-scaled sandboa that we've done in earlier episodes, which is Gongylophis conicus. So the loveregii name remained popular in the hobby for a long time, so a lot of the text and websites that you might find still may insist on listing them as Eryx colubrinus or Eryx colubrinus loveregii. What they make reference to is Gongylophis colubrinus, which is the Kenyan sandboa. So now I've got that tongue twister out of the way. Anyway, back to the story. So Gongylophis still remains closely related to the snakes that remained in Eryx, the old world sandboas, and they actually occur in the Erysinae family, and the Erysinae family also includes genus Churina, and genus Churina contains the rubber boas, which are from North America. A lot of people are now classing the rosy boas, which I class as genus Lichenora, as genus Churina, and the two-headed python, which is actually a boa, or the Calabar ground python, which is also actually a boa, whose Latin name was Calabaria reinhardti, is now also in Churina reinhardti as well. And that forms the Erysinae family, along with Eryx, Gongylophis, and Churina. The common name for this group, the Erysinae, is the Old World sandboas, yet it contains 2 groups of New World boas and some weird live-bearing python. So, as usual, it seems like the taxonomists don't know their arse from their elbow. We just have to sort of pick up the pieces as we go. But anyway, what a wonderful snake. Absolutely amazing. Distribution of this guy is sub-Saharan Africa. Bit of a misnomer really for the whole species, now that they've removed the north and south divide and it's just classed as the one species. Distribution includes Niger, Egypt, Ethiopia, Somalia, Tanzania and Kenya. So it is weird that its common name, its vernacular name is Kenyan sandboa, but this obviously must be from when the loveregii part was still active and the loveregii animals were associated with being more strongly coloured orange in their parts of the range, so you can see why this is an absolutely fabulous example of what a classic loveregii would look like. So yes, the type locality is actually Egypt. Adult size is going to be around 75 to 90 centimetres for a girl, but to be able to actually find one approaching that size is going to be good going. This is a lump of a sandboa, and this is a female, and it's nowhere near 90 centimetres long. Lovely and chunky, no really discernible neck, very thick set, and surprisingly powerful for such a diminutive species. The males are far more slight and smaller in build, and they can become more sporadic as feeders as they get older, as with many of the animals. So sexual dimorphism is definitely here in this species. The females are big, chunky monsters with great appetites. The boys are a bit more hit and miss with their food, certainly as adults. As babies they feed fine, but then from about 18 months, 2 years onwards, they can start stuttering a little bit. Coloration is highly variable across the whole range, with populations of both yellow and orange animals in existence, with varying amounts of patternation and darker contrasting back colour. This is a fossorial species or burrowing species that loves being in loose or friable soil and sand mixes where it can bury, and it is wonderfully adept at almost swimming through these kinds of substrates. What's interesting about these species, this species, is that the scales are lovely and smooth up towards the front, which we call the anterior, and then the posterior scales are heavily keeled with a ridge down the centre of every scale. So it's an interesting design choice that you'd be smooth at one end and then keeled at another, but maybe this is to be able to gain more traction and push against the substrates as it moves through. I've not read that, but it would make sense, and it's just interesting that we've got a contrast in scale design. We've got plenty of examples of animals that would change in patternation, but to have the scalation changes from anterior to posterior is odd. Some snakes might change from on the flanks up onto the dorsum, but it's odd to have it this way round. So I think it's definitely something to do with maybe to aid with propulsion through the loose substrate. They will lay and in ambush. They will submerge nearly all of their body with only their snout and eyes protruding from the surface, which sort of blends in wonderfully with any nearby stones and pebbles, and they will wait for animals to walk past, and they will kill them with constriction as normal. It's a boa constrictor. As with all boa constrictors, this is also a live bearer. Litters of 10 to 20 young can be born, and they're born with large yolk reserves in their stomach, so it's quite common for them to be resistant to feed in the beginning, but with patience they will kick in. They're not a particularly problematic animal to raise and get feeding and established properly. Basking temperatures want to be between sort of 32 and 34 Celsius at the hotspot, and an opportunity to cool down to about 25 or 26 Celsius. You can either provide belly heat or you can provide light heat, as long as it's strapped to a thermostat. I'm not going to be particularly snippy about the style that you use. I'll let you lot argue about it amongst yourselves, which you all seem so adept at doing. As long as there's a basking area of 32 to 34 that it can move to and from, you will be fine. So loose substrates, we're going to be using soil and sand mixers. You could use some of the bioactive substrates that are out there that are designed for arid substrates. They are friable and shifting substrates which these animals could bury themselves into very effectively. They are destructive though with whatever's in the tank, so I would be tempted to leave your plants in pots if you're going bio and you're going to be using more arid stuff. So it would be things like the aloe, the echeveria, the kalanchoe, the sedum, grappa topellum, any of these sorts of species. You should be fine. You want the lower stuff that's more just a rosette rather than the shrubs and things. They're too top heavy, so things like aeoniums will just get upturned too quickly. If you're going to keep live plants, you're going to have full spectrum lighting over the snakes to be able to do it. Personally, I think it's too much of a faff and a mess about. Just enjoy keeping your snake, keep it in a loose friable substrate, and if just use artificial plants. If it upends them, it's easy to put them back together without them destroying this major investment in live plants that you've made. There may also be a concession with the amount of humidity that live plants introduce as well. Even these succulents that I am listing still require quite a sizable amount of water to keep them healthy, so bear that in mind. Generally shedding is problem free, although if it's going to stick, it sticks around the tail, where these thicker, heavier keeled scales seem to be more robust and definitely more armoured, and the skin can appear thicker. If you find that the skin sticks, you can maybe have a localised damp area that they could crawl through in their tank, and this will help to loosen off the scales. But suck it and see. Some people will have no shedding issues, others in new build houses which are particularly dry may well have issues, but you just react to it. It's a relatively easy problem to resolve. These animals can cool down quite a lot at night, and at which point this makes them hardy. It means that their immune system is responsive across a much wider range than we would normally associate with boas. This is what makes them hardy. This is what makes them fantastic pets. Temperament, as you can see, is usually superb, where they are completely calm, slow moving, easygoing animals, and it's a boa constrictor. How cool is this? Something that's full grown, absolutely gorgeous to look at, really interesting design, and the way that they're put together with the eyes on the top of their head to aid with hunting, and these scale changes, and the fact that they're available in a wide range of colour phases now means that they are just such a superb option, and definitely something that you shouldn't sleep on as an idea as a first pet. That said, these are boas that have good appetites, and they can be very food orientated, and when they lay in wait they seem to be more triggered by movement than by smell, and they can react and whip to bite whatever is moved in front of their head very quickly without realizing that it's a keeper's hand. So my advice would be to never approach these face first when they are at rest in the vivarium, because it looks like they're fast asleep. In actual fact, they're laid waiting to pounce. So at which point, always try and find the middle and pick them up, which is easier said than done when the snake is buried. So have a good search around for those eyes and snout just poking out of the top of the substrate, and you should be just fine. Honestly, you could do far worse than this as your first pet, and a simply wonderful species. You can get the albinos and exanthics and snows. There's loads of different examples out there. They're just absolutely glorious. They're bred relatively commonly and relatively easily, so you should be able to source one of these without too many problems, and they make a fantastic addition to any collection. So bear them in mind. The Latin name is Gongylophis colubrinus. I will post the notes, probably be tomorrow now, that I made for the video to help me, so this will help you with your research. We'll keep the videos coming from myself and Paul at Snakes and Adders. We'll see you soon. Cheers.